I was sent an article by ynetnews.com by one of my regular contributors entitled EU Warns Israel Palestinians of the Cost of Peace Failure. And this is basically what the article says. It says both sides of Israeli-Palestinian peace talks risk paying a high price in losing European Union trade and aid if negotiations collapse, the EU ambassador to Israel said on Wednesday. We have made it clear to the parties that there will be a price to pay if these negotiations falter, Ambassador Lars Faaborg Andresen, I guess it is, told reporters. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is trying to draw up a broad framework deal that would open the way for a final round of detailed discussions to end the generations-old conflict, covering all the core elements dividing the two sides. However, despite more than 5 months of talks, there has been no sign of any imminent breakthrough. And frankly, I don't suspect that there will be. I mean, in all honesty, the Palestinians are actually looking to go to the UN and plead their case. And they're also looking for sanctions to be handed down upon Israel because they feel they have not cooperated. And of course, Israel, for their part, says that the negotiations simply aren't going forward because Abbas does not want to budge an inch on any of the issues. Going on with the article, it says the EU has grown especially frustrated by Israel's repeated announcement since the talks started of new Jewish settlement building on land the Palestinians want for their future state. If Israel were to go down the road of continued settlement expansion and were there not to be any result in the current talks, I am afraid that what will transpire is a situation where Israel finds itself increasingly isolated, he said. A major private Dutch pension fund announced earlier this month that it was divesting from 5 large Israeli banks because of their operations in the settlements, and Norwegian and Swedish funds are considering similar moves. Now here's the part where I believe that the EU is finally going to step in at some point. It says, while EU states are not advising firms to cut investments in Israel, officials say companies might act unilaterally to avoid any backlash from clients increasingly disenchanted with continued Israeli occupation of land seized in the 1967 war. Israel's pro-settler economy minister Naftali Bennett on Monday made light of the possibility of a boycott on Israel and has suggested that the government should look to bolster ties with emerging markets to offset problems with Europe. Now, despite Israel's intimate ties with the United States, the European Union is actually its biggest economic partner, accounting for almost 1/3 of the country's exports and imports. Faaborg Anderson questioned how quickly Israel could change focus. Basically what he's saying is that if Israel thinks that they can do without the European Union, that it'd be interesting to see how quickly they could move away from the European Union and survive. To think you can shift all your cooperation trade, everything overnight to India, China, and Russia, well, I have my doubts, he said. The 28-nation EU has potentially even more leverage over the Palestinians, providing some 1 billion euros of assistance each year to the cash-strapped Palestinian Authority, making it by far the largest donor to the West Bank economy. It has been made very clear to the Palestinians that just sitting around and waiting is not an option, said Faaborg Anderson, warning that donor fatigue was already setting in. So this is why basically the European Union is far more equipped to come to an agreement with the Palestinians and the Israelis because they have a big stake in both parties. Whereas the United States simply is not a trusted partner by either side for that matter, and does not have the stake that the European Union has. That's why I believe that ultimately, and the Bible backs it up, that ultimately the European Union will be the block of nations that will bring peace to that region. And going on with the article, it says, however, the ambassador said Israel also risked losing out if an increasingly frustrated EU decided to cut PA funding. I think it is realized in Israel that this money is key to the stability of the West Bank and in Gaza. If we don't provide the money, I think there is a great likelihood that Israel would have to provide far more. So what is the conclusion of what this article brings? Well, basically what's going to happen is, I believe, come April, you're going to see no real progress in the framework negotiations, and I think eventually the European Union is going to step in. Now, how far down the road that will be, I don't know, but I simply don't see this agreement taking a step forward with anything significant between now and April. Now, I've heard some say, well, does that mean that there's probably going to be a war if there isn't peace come April? Is that going to bring about another intifada? Well, certainly I can't speak for Hamas or Hezbollah or the West or for the Fatah or whatever the case may be. I'm sure there'll be some rocket attacks or whatever the case may be. But as far as an all-out war between Israel and its neighbors or nations that surround Israel or even in the outer periphery, no, I don't see that happening at all. The next thing on God's agenda as far as the Middle East is concerned is peace. And frankly, according to the military intelligence, I can't even imagine who Israel would have a war with. I mean, the bottom line is Egypt is too tied up in their own domestic problems. The same with Syria. Jordan is basically making agreements with Israel. They're in absolutely no mood to go to war with them. And wouldn't fare very well even if they did. Iran is basically in a fantastic position where they've got most of the free world, making agreements with them on their nuclear program while Israel protests. So Iran is not going to be attacking Israel anytime soon, especially over some crazy territory in the West Bank. That simply is not one of their interests at this time. And as you remember, the last article I brought to you, that Stratford Intelligence indicates that as long as the Middle East neighbors of Israel remain fractured, meaning that there's no real military cooperation, and that in the region that Israel's in fine shape. And I don't see, and neither does any military analyst see, that that's going to be something that's going to take place anytime soon. Now, of course, that could all change once the rapture of the church takes place. In fact, I look for that to change. And something that you probably should be aware of, and that is, I also read in the Stratford Report lately, that Russia's economy is beginning to falter. And if oil prices continue to fall as they have, Russia's economy is really going to take a hit. I mean, it's fairly common that if there's something happening, as long as the Middle East is in turmoil, that oil prices begin to rise. So a hostile Middle East toward Israel and the rest of the Arab world and Islamic world is a good thing as far as Russia is concerned, because it brings high dollar oil prices and stuffs their coffers full of money. So what do I see for the future? Well, I see this right here. I see that the peace talks are going to break down. The Palestinians will probably appeal to the United Nations to sanction Israel or to make some other bold move. And depending upon how the U.S. reacts, that we'll see how that works out. But at some point in time, I believe that these talks will basically go the way the Iranian talks have gone, and that is where the European Union basically will take over those talks and become the lead representation of the talks. But will there be war as a result of this breakdown? No, it's not. You're not going to see a war. Frankly, the parties that are involved are simply not powerful enough to bring about a meaningful war. Now, could this bring about a terrorist uprising of some sort, that such on the order of what happened with Operation Lead Cat a couple of years back? Possibly, but it's not going to bring about a major nation-state type of war. But I feel it'll be interesting to see the direction that the United States will take come April, or should I say come May 1st, when no progress has been made. So I do look forward to May 1st because I'd like to see what the direction is going to be and how quickly the European Union does step in, and to see if they do step in. So that'll be an interesting time to see. I've been waiting for the European Union to take control of this situation, and when that happens, that's when you need to start looking up. Now, lastly, do I see Mr. Obama at the last minute, an 11th hour attempt, jumping in to see if he can make a difference in bringing about these peace talks together? I don't foresee that happening at all. In fact, he himself made a statement about a week ago, that he believes it has a less than 50% chance of even having a positive outcome come April. So I don't foresee him jumping in on a lost cause. But that's what I see happening between now and April 30th. And as always, if you don't know the Lord, you need to make that decision. And if you haven't received a copy of my new Tribulation Period Survival Guide paperback book, you need to get that. Put it on your coffee table. In fact, buy several copies and pass them out to your friends, loved ones, and neighbors. If you really believe that the rapture of the church is about to take place, you need to take this proactive step. Get these books into the hands of everyone you know and pray that the Lord will convict their hearts and they might get saved, whether it be on this side of the rapture or on the other side. Well, I hope you'll do that, and may the Lord bless you in your endeavor to win more people to Him. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.